It's considered one of the finest delicacies in the world, served in Michelin-starred restaurants, priced at hundreds of dollars per pound, and cherished by celebrity chefs as the ultimate luxury ingredient. But it's also banned in multiple countries, condemned by animal rights activists, and called one of the cruelest foods ever created. I'm talking about foie gras, French for fatty liver, a food so controversial that its very existence sparks heated debates about ethics, tradition, and the price of luxury. Today, we're going behind the scenes of foie gras production. You'll see exactly how it's made, from the farm to your plate, why it's so expensive, and why this ancient delicacy has become a modern battlefield. Warning: what you're about to see might change your relationship with fine dining forever. Before we dive into the controversy, let's understand what foie gras actually is. Foie gras is the fat and liver of a duck or goose. Not just any liver, but one that has been specifically enlarged through a feeding process called gavage. A normal duck liver weighs around 75 to 100 grams. A foie gras liver weighs between 400 to 600 grams, sometimes reaching up to 900 grams. That's 6 to 10 times larger than normal, enlarged to the point where the liver becomes approximately 85 to 90% fat. This creates an incredibly rich, buttery texture and complex flavor that food critics describe as unlike anything else. The taste is intensely savory, smooth, almost custard-like when cooked, with notes that some compare to butter, cream, and a subtle metallic sweetness. When seared properly, the exterior caramelizes while the interior remains silky. It literally melts in your mouth. The practice of producing foie gras dates back over 4,000 years. Ancient Egyptians noticed that wild geese naturally gorged themselves before migration, fattening their livers to store energy for the long journey. They began domesticating and force-feeding geese to replicate this effect year-round. The Romans adopted the practice, and it eventually became deeply embedded in French culinary tradition, particularly in the southwestern regions of Gascony and Périgord. Today, France produces approximately 75% of the world's foie gras, around 20,000 tons annually. It's so culturally significant that in 2006, the French government officially declared foie gras part of the protected cultural and gastronomic heritage of France. The production of foie gras follows a specific timeline that takes approximately 12 to 14 weeks for ducks and 14 to 17 weeks for geese. It begins with the rearing phase. Ducklings are hatched in industrial hatcheries, typically mallard ducks, a hybrid breed specifically developed for foie gras production because they grow quickly and have large livers. For the first 4 weeks, the ducklings are raised in warm, controlled environments and fed a standard diet to ensure healthy growth. They need to develop strong digestive systems before the intensive feeding phase begins. After this initial period, the birds move to the growing phase, where they spend the next 8 to 10 weeks in open barns or outdoor areas. During this time, they're fed a diet of corn and grain to build their body mass and strengthen their esophagus for what comes next. The birds are allowed to eat naturally during this phase, and conditions on farms vary widely. Some facilities provide outdoor access and more space per bird, while intensive operations keep birds in more confined indoor conditions. During this growing period, the birds need to reach a minimum weight, typically around 4 kilograms for ducks, before they're ready for the final phase. The environment during this stage is crucial because stressed or unhealthy birds won't survive the gavage period or produce quality livers. Now we come to the most controversial part, gavage, the force-feeding process. For the final 2 to 4 weeks of their lives, the birds undergo gavage multiple times per day. Here's exactly how it works. A worker, called a gaver, catches each bird and holds it securely, usually between their legs or against their body. A metal or plastic tube, approximately 20 to 30 centimeters long and 8 to 10 millimeters in diameter, is inserted down the bird's throat directly into the esophagus. This tube is connected to a funnel or pneumatic feeding machine. A measured amount of corn-based feed, mixed with fat to create a mash, is forced directly into the bird's crop and stomach. For ducks, this is typically around 300 to 400 grams of feed per feeding. For geese, it can be up to 700 grams. The entire process takes just a few seconds per bird, maybe 5 to 15 seconds depending on the method and the skill of the worker. This happens 2 to 3 times per day for ducks, and 2 times per day for geese, always at the same hours to establish a routine. The birds are kept in individual cages or small group pens during this period to limit movement and ensure maximum weight gain. The feed amount increases progressively over the gavage period. What starts as maybe 200 grams in the first feeding gradually increases to 400 or more by the final days. The bird's liver begins to accumulate fat, growing larger each day. By the end of the process, the liver has become massively enlarged, sometimes comprising up to 10% of the bird's total body weight. Producers monitor the birds closely during this period. Birds that show signs of illness or whose livers aren't developing properly are removed from the gavage process. The mortality rate during gavage is a controversial statistic, with industry sources claiming it's between 2 to 4%, while critics suggest it can be higher in intensive operations. After 12 to 14 days of gavage for ducks or 14 to 21 days for geese, the birds are transported to slaughter facilities. Timing is critical. If slaughtered too early, the liver hasn't reached optimal size. If too late, the liver can begin to deteriorate, or the bird may die from liver failure. At the processing facility, birds are typically stunned using electrical stunning or controlled atmosphere stunning with carbon dioxide, then killed by bleeding. The carcass is quickly processed because the enlarged liver is extremely delicate and heat sensitive. Workers carefully extract the liver, which at this point is pale beige to pink in color, smooth, and dramatically oversized. The liver is immediately inspected for quality. Inspectors look for uniform color, firmness, and the absence of blood spots or lesions. Livers are graded, with grade A being the finest, showing perfect color and texture. Lower grades may have imperfections but are still sold, often for processing into pâtés or tranches. The highest quality whole lobes are reserved for searing or torchon preparations where the liver's appearance and texture are showcased. After grading, the livers are deveined, meaning the blood vessels are carefully removed. This is skilled work because the liver is so fatty it can easily fall apart. The liver may be sold fresh, which commands the highest prices but must be used within days, or it's preserved through various methods. Some are vacuum sealed and pasteurized, others are made into tranches or pâtés, and premium products are sold as mi-cuit, gently cooked and preserved. The rest of the duck isn't wasted. The breast meat, legs, and fat are all valuable products. Duck confit, made from the legs, is another prized French specialty. The rendered fat is sold as cooking fat, highly valued for its flavor. Now let's address the massive ethical controversy surrounding foie gras. Animal rights organizations, including PETA, the Humane Society, and numerous others, call foie gras production inherently cruel and argue it should be banned worldwide. Their main arguments focus on several key points. First, the gavage process itself. Critics argue that forcing a tube down a bird's throat and pumping their stomach full of food multiple times daily causes fear, stress, and physical trauma. They claim the esophagus can be damaged, leading to infections and injuries. Video footage from undercover investigations has shown birds with wounds around their necks, difficulty breathing, and signs of distress. Second, the unnatural enlargement of the liver. The liver becomes so engorged with fat that it's technically in a disease state called hepatic steatosis. In humans, this condition causes pain, discomfort, and organ failure. Critics argue that birds must experience similar suffering. Third, the housing conditions during gavage. Birds are often kept in individual cages barely larger than their bodies, preventing them from turning around, spreading their wings, or engaging in natural behaviors like swimming or foraging. This confinement alone, activists argue, causes psychological suffering. Fourth, the mortality rate. Even by industry standards, more birds die during gavage than during normal rearing, suggesting the process pushes their bodies beyond healthy limits. These concerns have led to bans or production restrictions in over a dozen countries and regions, including California, which banned foie gras sales from 2012 to 2015 before a court overturned it, only to have it reinstated again. New York City passed a ban taking effect in 2022. India, the United Kingdom, Germany, Israel, and several other nations have banned production, though not always importation. Major retailers including Whole Foods and numerous restaurant chains have stopped selling foie gras in response to consumer pressure. The foie gras industry and its defenders offer strong counterarguments to these criticisms. They argue that the practice, while intensive, is not inherently cruel when done properly. Their key points include the unique biology of waterfowl. Ducks and geese have elastic esophaguses designed to swallow large fish whole and lack a gag reflex like mammals. Industry representatives argue that the feeding tube doesn't cause pain or distress because the bird's anatomy is built for this type of feeding. They point to the fact that wild waterfowl naturally gorge themselves before migration, intentionally fattening their livers. Foie gras producers argue they're simply mimicking and accelerating a natural process. Studies funded by the industry claim that properly performed gavage doesn't cause lasting damage to the esophagus, and that birds actually approach feeders willingly once conditioned to the routine. Regarding the enlarged liver, producers argue that unlike human fatty liver disease, which is pathological, the bird's liver remains functional throughout the process. The fat accumulation is reversible. If gavage stops, the liver returns to normal size within weeks. Some veterinarians and animal scientists argue that while the liver is enlarged, there's insufficient evidence that birds experience it as painful. The industry also points to improvements in welfare standards. Many modern farms provide better housing, outdoor access during the growing phase, and use pneumatic feeding systems that are faster and more consistent than manual feeding, potentially reducing stress. France has specific regulations requiring minimum space, access to water for bathing, and trained workers performing gavage. Culturally, defenders argue that foie gras is integral to French heritage and rural economies. Thousands of small family farms depend on foie gras production for their livelihoods. Banning it would destroy traditional ways of life and agricultural practices that have existed for centuries. They also point out hypocrisy in the criticism, noting that industrial chicken, pig, and cattle farming involve practices many consider equally or more problematic, yet these aren't banned or face less scrutiny. The controversy has sparked innovation in alternatives to traditional foie gras. Several companies are now producing faux gras or ethical foie gras using different methods. Some are entirely plant-based, using combinations of nuts, legumes, and fats to mimic the texture and flavor of foie gras. Brands like Foie Gras and others have created products that attempt to replicate the experience without any animal involvement. These appeal to vegans and those opposed to gavage on principle. Another approach involves natural feeding without force feeding. A Spanish farm called La Pateria de Souza developed a method where geese are allowed to eat naturally, gorging themselves seasonally as they would in the wild. The resulting liver is smaller and less fatty than traditional foie gras, and production is extremely limited and expensive, but it demonstrates that enlargement is possible without gavage. The most cutting-edge development is cellular agriculture. At least one company is working on cultivating foie gras from duck cells and bioreactors, similar to lab-grown meat. This would produce genuine foie gras tissue without raising or force-feeding any birds. The technology is still years from commercial viability and faces regulatory hurdles, but it represents a potential future where the ethical concerns are completely eliminated. Meanwhile, the traditional industry continues adapting. Some premium producers are emphasizing welfare standards, providing more space, shorter gavage periods, and complete transparency about their methods. They're betting that consumers who understand the full process and see improved conditions will continue supporting traditional foie gras. So where does this leave us? Foie gras sits at the intersection of gastronomy, tradition, ethics, and animal welfare in perhaps the most contentious way of any food product. For some, it represents culinary excellence, centuries of tradition, and the pinnacle of fine dining. The unique flavor and texture can't be easily replicated, and for food lovers, banning it means losing something irreplaceable. For others, no flavor justifies force-feeding animals and inducing disease in their organs, regardless of how expertly it's done or how delicious the result. The question becomes, can a food be both culturally significant and ethically problematic? And if so, what should we do about it? There's no easy answer. What we can say is that the foie gras debate forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about what we eat, how it's produced, and what price we're willing to pay, both in dollars and in conscience, for luxury. Whether foie gras survives the next few decades may depend less on tradition and more on whether producers can address welfare concerns convincingly, whether alternatives can truly replicate the experience, and whether society decides some culinary traditions should evolve or end. One thing is certain: this won't be the last time we have to wrestle with the conflict between gastronomy and ethics. What do you think? Is foie gras a culinary treasure worth preserving, or a cruel practice that should be banned? Share your thoughts in the comments, and remember to keep the discussion respectful. If you found this deep dive valuable, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. We'll continue exploring controversial food production methods in future videos. Thanks for watching.